They said the bow once snapped a prince's spine, yet even then he refused to let go. That was the first whisper Kara heard as she stepped into the training hall of the Galactic Academy. The hall was as vast as a stadium, its ceiling lost somewhere above the bright lines of floating banners. Cadets from dozens of species lined the walls, their eyes flicking toward the object resting on a stone pedestal at the center. It was longer than any human's height, built from some dark composite that shimmered faintly like wet obsidian, and wrapped in cords that looked like sinew but pulsed faintly with their own rhythm. The beast bow, they called it. No one had ever drawn it without consequence. Broken arms, shattered shoulders, collapsed lungs. The bow demanded more than strength. It demanded something no one had yet been able to name. Kara, the only human in the year's class of entrants, stared at it with curiosity more than awe. Her hands were still calloused from her family's small farm back on Earth, where machines were scarce and most of the real work fell to her and her siblings. She had carried pails of water across fields, hoisted stones to mend walls, and wrangled stubborn animals into pens. To her, the bow just looked heavy, not divine. The cadets around her, though, watched with hushed reverence, as if the weapon might wake and strike if they breathed too loudly. The instructor, a towering Ross, with scaled skin that rippled under the hall's lighting, strode forward. His tail scraped along the floor with a metallic rasp. "Today you will learn why the Academy sets limits," he announced, his voice echoing. "The beast bow is not a tool for your training. It is a reminder. Power lies not only in strength, but in the cost one is willing to pay. You will approach it, and you will feel it. Few can even touch the string." One by one cadets were called forward. A Rithkin brute with arms as thick as pillars stepped up first. He snorted, his chest plates expanding, and reached for the bowstring. The moment his fingers brushed it, the string pulsed with a strange vibration that carried across the hall. He heaved, muscles bulging, and managed to pull it a fraction before his knees buckled. The bow flared with a deep hum that rattled the floor. He let go with a cry, clutching his chest as the tendons rushed to steady him. Next came a feathered Illyri, her wings folded tight to her back. She touched the bow gently, as if coaxing. For a second the string seemed to move willingly, but then it whipped back with a shock that hurled her several meters into the air. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She landed hard, feathers scattered across the floor. More cadets tried. More cadets failed. Some fell unconscious, others limped away with injuries. The bow stood untouched and immovable, as if mocking every effort. By the time the instructor called Kara's name, the hall's mood had shifted. The alien cadets eyed her with a mix of amusement and disdain. Whispers spread quickly. She was small, she was fragile, her world was provincial. What chance did she have where stronger beings had been humiliated? Kara walked up anyway. She didn't bow or pause in ritual. She simply looked at the bow the way she had looked at any stubborn animal back home, with the steady patience of someone who knew that fear only made things worse. She placed her hands on the grip, noting how oddly warm it felt, and pulled lightly at the string. A shiver ran up her arm. It wasn't just resistance. It was alive. The hall seemed to quiet. Karis inhaled once, then pulled again, stronger this time. The vibration surged into her chest, filling her ears with a low thrum like distant thunder. She did not recoil. She leaned into it, steady as if she were drawing water from a well. The bowstring stretched farther than it had for anyone else, quivering like it might snap. Yet her shoulders didn't falter. For a long heartbeat, the bow sang. A clear tone, high and impossible, filled the chamber. The cadets stared in stunned silence. Kara released slowly, the string easing back into place. No broken bones, no collapse, no attendants rushing to her side. Only the quiet after the sound, and the bow resting calm, as if it had accepted her touch. The instructor's tail flicked sharply. His pupils narrowed. "Step away," he ordered, though his voice had lost its earlier certainty. He studied her as if she had shifted something fundamental by doing what she just had. Kara simply stepped back, her face unreadable. To her it had been a challenge, nothing more. To the others, it was blasphemy. A human, untested and plain, had done what entire generations of cadets could not. The whispers rose again, louder now, tinged with disbelief and fear. She heard fragments. "Impossible. She isn't even enhanced. What does it mean? Kara walked to the back of the line, folding her arms. She wasn't sure why they made such a fuss. Back home, the hardest tasks were often solved, not by brute force, but by not being afraid of looking foolish. Maybe the bow wanted the same thing. What she didn't notice was the instructor sending a signal through his wristcom, his tail coiling tightly behind him. Within minutes, higher-ranking officers would know that the beast bow had finally moved, and that a human girl had been the one to draw it. Word spread faster than fire across the academy. By nightfall, the entire station was buzzing. Some called it luck. Others claimed it was a trick, but no one could deny that Kara had touched something ancient and come away whole. For the first time in years, the academy's greatest relic had answered to someone. And in the silence of her dorm later that evening, Kara sat on her bunk, staring at her own hands. They tingled faintly, as if the bow's hum had not yet faded. She clenched her fists once, not in triumph, but in quiet wonder. She had only wanted to see what it felt like. Now it seemed as though the entire academy wanted to see her. The summons came before dawn. Kara had barely slept. The faint buzz in her muscles still hadn't faded. When the door to her dorm slid open with a hiss, 2 attendants stood waiting, both clad in the academy's silver-trim uniforms. Neither spoke as they motioned for her to follow. The quarters of the academy were usually crowded with cadets moving between training halls, laboratories and lecture chambers, but at this hour they were empty, silent except for the hum of the ship system. Clara walked behind the attendants, noticing how their shoulders were stiff, as if escorting her were less a duty than a burden. They brought her to the spire chamber, the tallest structure in the academy, where only the highest-ranking officers convened. The doors opened, and she stepped into a circular room lined with towering windows that showed the curve of the gas giant the station orbited. At the center sat the Council of Instructors, beings from half a dozen worlds, their features as alien as the stars beyond the glass. The Avos instructor from the day before stood at their side, tail curling slowly around his feet. His voice carried across the room. "This is the human Kara." She felt their gazes pressed down on her, not hostile but heavy with calculation. One of the counselors, a pale crystalline figure whose body refracted light into shifting colors, leaned forward. "You drew the beast bow." The words were neither question nor praise, just a fact laid bare. Kara nodded once. "I pulled the string. It wasn't so hard." The reaction was immediate. A ripple of murmurs moved across the chamber. To them, she had just dismissed what countless cadets had nearly died attempting. The crystalline counselor's tones sharpened. "Not so hard? Do you mock the trial?" Kara kept her voice even. "Back home, tools are tools. If you need them, you use them. If they resist, you don't get angry. You try differently. That's all I did." We're just 17 subscribers away from hitting 1K. If you're enjoying this journey, be part of the milestone. Hit that subscribe button today. Another counselor, an elder with long tendrils drifting from his head like living vines, hissed softly, "The bow is no tool. It is a relic of the First War, forged when empires bled stars dry. Its will is its own. And yet you stood against it without collapse." His many eyes blinked in unison. "This disturbs us." The Avos instructor stepped forward. Permission to test her again. To confirm. The council exchanged glances, light glinting off scales, feathers, and crystal surfaces. Then the elder inclined his head. "So be it, but not in the hall. The proving grounds will suffice." Within the hour, Kara stood once more before the beast bow, now relocated to a vast arena enclosed in shimmering energy walls. Rosa cadets filled the stands, word of her feat having spread too quickly to contain. She could feel their stares, some curious, many resentful. She was the human anomaly threatening the hierarchy of their academy. The Avos gestured. "Draw." Kara approached the bow again. It looked unchanged, but now it seemed heavier with expectation, as if the entire station were holding its breath. She placed her hand on the grip, felt that same living warmth, and pulled. The vibration surged, the deep hum, but she kept her arm steady. The bow yielded, the string stretching farther than before. The sound was different this time, higher, sharper, like a cry echoing through the arena. The walls of energy flickered, disturbed by the resonance. Gasps filled the stands. Kara let the string return, calm as before, her breathing even. The Avos barked. Again, she obeyed, drawing once more. The bow sang louder, a strange harmony rising in the air. It seemed to carry something beyond sound, a pressure that made cadets clutch at their ears. Still, Kara held it unflinching until the Avros signaled her to release. When she stepped back, silence followed. Not the quiet of disbelief this time, but the silence of fear. The crystalline counselor rose from the dais. Enough. She has done it twice. The bow accepts her. The Avos scales flared, catching the light. Unacceptable. No human should stand where warriors of the core have fallen. This is trickery. Or worse, danger. Kara folded her arms, letting their words wash over her. She didn't know why the bow allowed her to draw it, but she knew she hadn't cheated, and she wasn't about to cower because others couldn't. From the stands, whispers rose again, carried on restless voices. Maybe it chooses, maybe she's a threat. The mood was shifting, dangerous and electric. The council ended the trial abruptly, ordering the bow sealed away once more. Guards escorted Kara out, their grips tight on their weapons as though she might turn on them at any moment. Back in her dorm, she found the hall buzzing louder than before. Some cadets glared at her openly now, their pride wounded. Others watched with wary fascination, unwilling to meet her eyes directly. That night, as she sat by the window, looking out at the endless storm bands of the worst giant, Kara finally admitted to herself what she had felt in the arena. The bow wasn't just resisting or testing her, it had recognized her, not like a tool, not like a challenge, but like a living thing deciding whether she was worth its song. And now, she realized with a faint chill, the academy wouldn't leave her alone until they understood why. By the next morning, Kara could not walk the corridors without drawing stare. Some cadets muttered insults under their breath, others whispered as she passed, and a few stared openly, their gazes sharp with envy or suspicion. She felt like a curiosity in a marketplace rather than a student. The academy had always thrived on competition, but this was different. She was no longer a rival. They saw her as a disruption. At midday she was summoned again, this time not to the council, but to the training fields. The Avos instructor waited for her, his posture rigid, tail thrashing faintly against the ground. Beside him stood 3 senior cadets from different species, each of them towering over Kara in size and reputation. "We will test you in another way," the Avos declared. "Strength is not the only measure. Let us see how you fare when the bow's favor does not shield you." Kara looked at the 3 cadets. One was armored in natural katan, another bristled with talons, and the last carried the grace of a predator in his every movement. It was obvious they weren't here to spar politely. She squared her shoulders. "So this is about proving I don't belong." The Avos hissed softly. "It is about balance. You will fight, and you will fail, and the others will be reminded that the order of things has not shifted." The match began without ceremony. The Khitan armored cadet lunged first, fists like hammers. Kara dodged, her farm-born reflexes guiding her more than any combat training. She had grown up avoiding the kicks of unruly livestock and the swing of machinery. Moving out of the way came naturally. The predator-like cadet circled, waiting for her misstep, while the talented one slashed to hem her in. Kara had no weapon, but she didn't panic. She ducked low, grabbed a handful of sand from the field floor, and flung it into the eyes of the closest opponent. The move drew a roar of disapproval from the crowd of watching cadets, but it gave her a precious second to roll aside. The predator struck then, fast and fluid, but Kara twisted, letting his momentum carry him into the Talon fighter. They collided with a snarl, and Kara retreated a few steps, breathing hard. The Avos' tail lashed the ground. "Clumsy tricks," he spat, but there was a note of surprise in his voice. The fight continued. Kara couldn't overpower them, but she didn't need to. She relied on movement, on making them trip over each other's aggression. Every shove, every dodge was born of years of practical labor, where hesitation meant broken bones. Sweat streaked her face, her lungs burned, yet she stayed on her feet. By the end, all 3 cadets were bruised, furious, and none of them had managed to pin her. The crowd murmured, unsettled. She hadn't won, not in the usual sense, but she hadn't been crushed either. The Avos finally called a halt, his expression unreadable. "Enough." She endures, but endurance is not victory. Kara wiped dirt from her face. "Sometimes surviving is victory," she said simply. The words carried further than she expected. A few cadets nodded despite themselves, while others glared harder. The line between curiosity and hostility was sharpening. That evening, Kara returned to her dorm to find a message slipped under her door. It wasn't official. The academy communicated through terminals, not paper. She unfolded it and read the short scroll in an unfamiliar hand. Meet in the observatory at third bell. Come alone. She debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. When the appointed time came, she climbed to the observatory, a glass dome overlooking the planet below. There, waiting in the shadows, was a figure cloaked in blue. The hood fell back to reveal an older cadet, one she recognized faintly as Solon, a scholar from a distant world known for its archives. His eyes gleamed with urgency. "You don't understand what you've done," he said quickly. "The beast bow is more than a relic. It is a key. Long ago it was said the bow would only yield to one who carried the strength of forgotten bloodlines, that it would mark them as a catalyst for change." Kara frowned. "That sounds like a story to frighten children." "Maybe," Solon admitted, "but the council believes. They fear what it means that you, a human, succeeded. You think they will simply study you? No, they will test you until you break, or use you until the bow reveals all it knows." Kara felt the chill of his words settle into her bones. She had thought the bow was just a challenge, a strange test of will, but now it seemed she had stepped into something much larger, something tangled with history and prophecy. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Solon's voice lowered. "I want you to survive, and maybe I want to see if the bow's song is not about destruction, but renewal. If you are the one it chooses, then you must be ready." Before Kara could reply, the observatory doors hissed open. Footsteps echoed. Solon pulled his hood back up and vanished into the shadow. Kara turned to see guards entering, their faces stern. "You are summoned again," one said. Kara followed, heart pounding. She didn't know whether Solon's warning was paranoia or truth, but she knew one thing: the academy wasn't finished with her yet. The chamber they led her to was different from before. It was deeper inside the academy, a vault beneath the training halls, lined with walls of black alloy that seemed to swallow light. At its center stood the beast bow once more, resting not on a pedestal this time, but suspended in a cage of energy fields. The council of instructors surrounded it, their eyes sharp and watchful. The crystalline counselor spoke first. "You have been brought here because the bow's response cannot be ignored. Twice you have drawn it before witnesses, and the sound it gave unsettled the very foundations of this station. The academy must know the truth. You will attempt once more, not in a demonstration, but in communion." Kara frowned. Communion. The elder with the vine-like tendrils stepped forward. "When the bow sings, it reveals fragments of memory. Those who have forced it have glimpsed nothing but pain, the echo of battlefields long gone. But you, if it accepts you, may see more. We will bind you to its resonance, and watch. This is no request. It is necessity." The Avos instructor's eyes glowed faintly. "And if the bow rejects her, the truth of her weakness will be clear to all." Kara felt the weight of their expectation press down like a storm. She remembered Solon's words in the observatory. "They will test you until you break." Maybe he had been right, but running wasn't an option now. She stepped forward, letting the hum of the energy cage wash over her as the council powered it down. The bow's presence filled the chamber instantly, vibrating in her chest like a second heartbeat. She grasped the grip. Warmth surged up her arms. The council murmured, recording, their eyes gleaming. Kara drew the string back slowly. The hum deepened, became a note, became a song. The chamber shook with it, dust drifting from the ceiling. Then the world changed. She stood not in the vault, but on a plain of scorched earth under a sky burning red. Colossal shapes moved in the distance, ships like mountains trading fire across the heavens. The bow in her hands glowed, alive with light. Around her lay figures in armor, silent, broken, as if history itself had been left scattered at her feet. The voice came not as sound but as presence. "Long have we waited. Long have we tested. You do not pull for conquest. You pull as if drawing breath. That is why we yield." Kara tried to speak, but no words came. The bow's energy pulsed, flooding her vision with fragments. Armies clashing, stars torn open, oaths whispered into the void. Always the bow in the center, passed from hand to hand, each wielder burning out in glory or ruin. Until now, the vision faded as she released the string. The song cut off. She was back in the vault, the council staring at her with something close to fear. "What did you see?" demanded the crystalline counselor. Kara hesitated. She thought of telling them everything. The voice, the message, the sense of recognition. But then she saw their hunger, the way they leaned forward, as if ready to carve truth from her if she didn't give it freely. Instead, she said carefully, "I saw battlefields, nothing more." The instructors exchanged uncertain glances. The avos hissed, "It is impossible." She stood longer than any before. "She hides something." "Perhaps," murmured the elder. "But perhaps the bow has chosen silence, as much as it has chosen her." The energy cage shimmered back into place, locking the bow away once again. The council dismissed her, their voices low with argument. Guards escorted her out, though less tightly than before. The whispers of the academy followed her all the way back to her dorm. That night, Kara sat alone in the dim light. Her hands still tingled with the bow's resonance. But more than that, her mind turned over the words she had heard. "You do not pull for conquest. You pull as if drawing breath." To her it had never been. She hadn't meant to prove anything, only to feel what it was like. Maybe that was why the bow had answered. The academy shifted after that. Some cadets avoided her. Others tested her. But none shook her calm. A few began to watch with quiet respect, as if she carried something they lacked. Even the instructors kept their distance, unsettled by what they had seen. Solonian passed once, whispering, "They will not stop wondering. Guard your truth, Kara." Weeks went by. The bow was spoken of less, though its shadow remained. Kara trained as before, carrying the vision in silence. The academy sought to measure her endurance. The bow had seen the steadiness she'd always lived with. One night, gazing down at the storms of the gas giant, she understood. The bow was no weapon of conquest, but a reminder: real power lies not in force, but in the hands that hold it without fear. Kara smiled faintly. The academy might never know why the bow chose her, but she did.